Everyman Nerds podcast. My name is Taylor Salen, and joining me today is Kurt Hall. How you doing tonight, Kurt?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
Good. I'm really excited to be on with you tonight because there's a certain film that came out this weekend that I really was looking forward to. Of course, this is Oblivion, Joseph Kosinski's Oblivion, starring Tom Cruise. It's a new science fiction film written, directed, and produced by Kosinski. And it's actually based on an unpublished graphic novel of the same name that I guess supposedly never gained traction, and he tried to turn it into a movie. So I'll go ahead and throw the ball to you, Kurt. What did you think about Oblivion?
I really like this movie. I thought it was a really good, it was a good way to kind of throw a lot of sci-fi ideas out and also make your own kind of sci-fi movie at the same right. Because there are a lot of moments in this movie that will harken back to movies like Moon or 2001, but it has its own story, which is it's nice. It's refreshing, and it kind of gives homage to good movies.
Cool.
And it has a really good performance from Tom Cruise, and yeah, it was fun.
Cool.
I liked it a lot.
All right, awesome. So that'll give you guys a little preview of what we think about the film. But before we go ahead and go any further on Oblivion, there's a few things we wanted to talk about. I don't know about you, Kurt, but I've been watching a lot of stuff this week. I actually had a few spare moments this week to actually kind of sit around and just watch some TV episodes that I'd missed. But one thing in particular I wanted to highlight that I watched was Hannibal. So we were talking a little bit before this, and you said you hadn't seen this, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the new Hannibal TV series that's kind of a spin-off and kind of its own thing. It has all new characters. There's Lawrence Fishburne in it, who I absolutely love as kind of that authoritative figure, which he is in this. He plays a police officer, one of the head police officers who's kind of leading the investigations into these murders. And of course it stars the always delightful Mads Mikkelsen as the aforementioned Hannibal Lecter. And he is just the total highlight of this show for me so far. Interestingly enough, I don't know how familiar you are with the Hannibal series of films, but one thing that I love about the Hannibal series of films is although they're people often think of Hannibal Lecter as the main character or the main draw for the movies, he's often a side character. And they kind of keep that going in this, where he's a side character, but when he is on screen, he is just, you can't keep your eyes off of him. He's just so great as Hannibal Lecter. But I just have to applaud this show because it's one of those ones where, like Breaking Bad, where it just goes to these crazy levels. As far as the story, things are happening that I thought wouldn't happen until 4 or 5 episodes in. It's kind of crazy, like how fast this show is moving. My mom and my dad and I were sitting there watching it the other night, and even my dad commented, he's like, "Wow, I don't even know what's going to happen next." And we were halfway through the second episode, So I think it's really kind of taking that Dexter model, though, at the same time, where it's not a killer of the week, something that I was hoping they weren't going to do with the show. And it's more, each killer is kind of drawn out between 2 or 3 episodes. So I would highly recommend this to anyone who is a fan of the Hannibal movies, or anyone who's just a fan of good serialized television in general, to watch this. So with that being said, there was something you wanted to go ahead and highlight this week, Kurt?
Yeah, before I do that, I wanted to say any show where a movie star like Lawrence Fishburne is interested in coming in and doing, you should probably watch that show, because it's probably going to be pretty solid, because TV actors don't normally go into that world. But I had the experience of watching Pitch Perfect this week, and it's good. I'll give it that. But it is very weird. It is. I would have never thought someone could actually make a movie about a cappella. And not only do they make it, this whole movie is pretty much a cappella. It's good for that reason, but it is really campy. It is very ridiculous, and some of the jokes are very PG-13, and it's weird because they'll have some stuff in there definitely look like it's in a rated R movie, but then you realize the movie's PG-13, and it's kind of awkward for that reason. Like there are some AIDS jokes in there, and I'm like, ugh, it's kind of a rough one to throw in, but it's good. I really like Anna Kendrick.
Mm-hmm.
Hendrick.
Yeah.
I always get her name wrong. She's really good in the lead role, and it's really creepy how she looks like a high schooler in this movie.
Yeah. Isn't she like 27 or something like that now?
She is. It's creepy. It's a good movie though. If you're a music fan and you're kind of into the choir kind of thing, I would watch Pitch Perfect. I guess there's a sequel in the works, and I'd be interested to see if they could turn this into kind of like a Step Up series where it's a high school type of movie. But this one probably could be better than the Step Up series. So.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's what I was actually going to ask you before you mentioned Anna Kendrick. I really actually enjoy her in a lot of stuff, not including Twilight and some other things, questionable choices. But I mean, she's great, and in bit parts, like in Scott Pilgrim, she had a couple tiny scenes in that movie, but she really made a pretty big impact in my mind. So I was curious to see like how she held up as a leading lady, and from what I can tell, you thought she did a pretty good job in the lead there.
Oh yeah, she also does a great job in the lead of 50-50 too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, she's incredible in 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
So she's definitely someone to look for in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Okay, so moving on to our full-on review here of Joseph Kosinski's Oblivion. Now, everyone that's watching kind of heard your thoughts, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in here and just kind of give my general thoughts on the movie. I really like this movie a lot. I have a few reservations with it, some of which I'll try to get into here in a minute. But overall, I thought this movie was really, really, really solid, well-crafted, visually striking sci-fi movie. And I mean, sometimes sci-fi movies can tend to get a little dumbed down, but I think this one struck a nice balance, between giving us those flashy visuals and focusing on more character-centric moments. And I know you mentioned when you first gave your thoughts also that Tom Cruise's leading performance in this, and I have to completely agree with that. I thought it was an interesting role for him to take. I thought it was a challenging role for him to take also, because he can kind of tend to get bogged down in his celebrity status, especially with doing the same things like the Mission Impossible movies. And I actually didn't get to see Jack Reacher, so I don't know what he was doing with that. But I actually heard that he was one of the best parts about last year's Rock of Ages, in which he kind of turned his persona up on its head a little bit. So, but the reason why I mentioned this is because I want you to go a little deeper into this character and his portrayal of him. So, what made you like this performance?
I just really like how down to earth Tom Cruise's character is in this movie. He's a guy who we actually see a lot about him without him going into his job. Like there's a specific scene in the movie where he's doing his occupation of repairing these drones, and he relives like this fictional 2017 Super Bowl, and you can just tell he's having a ball doing it. Like you can tell it's like a guy who really enjoys sports, and it's kind of just gives even more levity to this character. He's not just playing a guy. He's actually playing someone that probably is sort of like Tom Cruise. He's kind of comfortable in the character at every level, which I think is a level of acting that a lot of people don't really get to do. And I think Cruise does it pretty well.
Yeah.
Because he kind of does that in Jack Reacher from earlier this year, And well, he's a little better than in Jack Reacher in Oblivion. It's still a really good job from him, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I really have to agree with you on that one. Again, going back to kind of that character-centric mentality that Kaczynski brings to his directing choices here, and like exactly like the scene you mentioned, the one where he's recreating that fictional sporting event, and I mean, it's moments like that that really kind of, like you said, brought a little levity to the character. You could see this guy kind of had a sense of humor and a playfulness to him that I kind of really enjoyed. It made me really care for him a little more and want to see him kind of go on this journey that he goes on. Pretty solid performance. I don't think it's Tom Cruise's best performance, but it's pretty darn solid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So the big casting decision that I wasn't completely sure about when I first heard of it last year was the decision to cast Olga Kurylenko as one of the kind of the co-lead of the movie in a way. What did you think of Olga Kurylenko in this movie?
I thought she was okay. She definitely doesn't tear up the screen when she's on, and she's kind of dull at moments, but her character isn't the most interesting in the world to begin with. She's kind of a flat character, so she doesn't really have a whole lot to work off of, but her relationship with Cruise on screen is actually viable, and I could buy into it. So, while she's not a world beater in the role, it's still pretty decent work, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have to agree because the only films I've seen her in are things like the Quantum of Solace, 007. I saw her in Max Payne, which I didn't think she was exceptionally memorable in, and lots of like Hitman. I mean, she's been in a lot of really bad movies, so I think that's kind of kind of tarnished her reputation in a way. But I actually thought she did a pretty darn good job in this movie. I was surprised the level of emotion and weight that this character she brought this to this character on screen. You know. But I think the same has to go for the other main female protagonist, if you will, who is Victoria. She's played by Andrea Riseborough. I guess is how you pronounce that. She's a British actress, and I've actually never heard of this actress before, but I thought she did a fairly good job as kind of the almost malevolent antagonist in a way in this movie, almost like a HAL 9000, if you will. The one that, that you're kind of sitting there thinking like, I don't think this person's up to any good, and although they're seeming like their actions are very, they have good intentions with their actions, they're kind of playing with the strings behind the scenes. And I thought she brought a lot of that, a sense of that to the character. So what did you think about Andrea Riseborough?
I thought she was actually really good, especially with the tone shifts that she has to go through as a character. Like, she has this loving kind of nature at the beginning, and you can kind of buy into this semi-weird relationship because these people kind of don't go together, but they're together, so you're kind of fighting through that. But then, when the twists come in and her character kind of switches, she's really good. She's that scene with the door.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away what happens, but she is fantastic in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Just so creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one, man. And I actually thought that she, I don't know, man. She didn't really have a lot of screen time. I mean, although you hear her a lot in the movie, when you actually see her, really isn't that often. And so I think that's a good sign of how good the performance is, because she's actually able to kind of bring that weight and bring the things that are needed for those scenes in particular that happen late in the second act. So I thought she did a really great job. But so what I really want to know is what you thought of Joseph Kosinski's direction in this, because after Tron Legacy, I wasn't quite sure what to expect from this guy.
I thought it was pretty solid. I don't think it's a masterpiece on any level, but
Yeah.
it's definitely vastly better than Tron Legacy. And I think he treats these actors in such a way that they actually have their own characters to play. It's not like they're just playing these cardboard cutouts, kind of like in Tron Legacy at times. Um, and the visuals are just amazing. I could see this movie maybe stealing an Oscar for visual effects, because that sky landing setting in the beginning of the movie is beautiful. I
Yeah.
don't even know how they do it, but it looks real when you look at it. It's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
and the Earth looks so beautiful. It's so beautifully terrifying because there's nothing there, but it looks so good. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make, because there's also like throughout the movie there's remnants of famous landmarks and places we all know, that are kind of scattered throughout, and that really adds to the real dire nature of the way that the Earth is portrayed in this movie. It's kind of almost at the point of extinction in a way, and I thought that was an interesting way to go.
I really like too. You really can feel that he wants to do this movie. Like it's kind of like his life work that he's putting to the screen. Just because he's done the story and he wanted to sell this story just in a different form than a movie, and he found a medium to do it on a visual level. And I think that's cool.
Yeah. That's completely awesome, man. Um, I I was doing a little research beforehand here, and that's one of the things that I actually found out about Joseph Kosinski's kind of intention behind making the film is that he wanted, and I'll go ahead and read the quote here. It says Joseph Kosinski wanted to kind of craft a love letter to 70s sci-fi, even though it kind of really takes everything we know about sci-fi and kind of mashes it together in a different way. Um, there's still a lot of famous storylines and um, character arcs that we've seen before in sci-fi movies, especially like you were saying, 2001. There's things like that come out. You mentioned Moon, and we won't get into that because that's getting a little spoilery. Um, but I just thought that the way he kind of meshed these things together was really interesting, and although it was very familiar, which I know a lot of people on the internet and in reviews have been kind of uh, beating on the movie for, in a way. They're saying, oh, it's not good because we've seen it all before. But I thought he was able to create an interesting mix of these things. So, what are your thoughts on kind of the influences that came into this to kind of create this movie?
I think it's cool. I think he does a cool homage to these great movies that we've watched in the past. But he also has his own flair to it. It's not like he's copying a Stanley Kubrick or a Ridley Scott. He's actually just kind of doing his own movie with ideas that have shown up in other sci-fi movies. But
Yeah.
let's face it, it's really hard to make an original sci-fi movie nowadays. Like, honestly, Looper was probably the last movie I've watched that was a sci-fi movie that was original.
Yeah, completely original. Yeah, I have to agree. And even then, it uses a lot of time travel tropes that we've seen before, but just again puts a new twist on them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely love Looper for its originality as well, and kind of the twist it takes, the chances it takes, and I think the same goes for Oblivion. There's a lot of kind of a lot of risks being taken here. I mean, we talked about this a little bit before when we discussed Tom Cruise, and it was kind of like one of those things where Tom Cruise has kind of turned into box office poison in a way recently. I mean, you look at Rock of Ages, you look at Jack Reacher, um, those things, those movies weren't very profitable, and he was the biggest, he was top billed on those movies, and they still were kind of outbeaten by other different non-Tom Cruise vehicles. You know, I mean, of course, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol uh, kind of brought him back in a way because that movie made a lot of money. But from what I hear, Oblivion actually made a lot of money. And when I went to see this movie, I just got back from the theater tonight before we hopped on here, and I was just so happy to see the theater almost packed. I mean, it's just so encouraging to see audiences going to sci-fi movies and trying to see original stuff that doesn't have a name brand attached to it, you know. And so I have to really kind of applaud Joseph Kosinski here just for trying to bring something like that to audiences, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I like rogue filmmakers that try to do something a little different than the mainstream.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely have to agree with that, man. And one of the things I didn't like about this movie, however, is I thought that it was at times being homage, but at also times I felt it was a little self-indulgent in a way. Like it wanted to try to do all these things at once, and while at the same time, while I really loved that aspect of the movie, it kind of started to wear on me because it felt like there was just so many parts to the story. The story was super complex in this movie. I mean, I don't know if you agree with me on that one, but I felt like the story was super complex with the whole thing that's going on out in space and the whole like when he's flying the ship, he has to communicate to the girl, and then the girl has to communicate to that, and it felt like there was a lot of exposition there that kind of wasn't necessary in a way. And same goes for the opening monologue kind of thing that happens in to kind of start off the film. I felt that was really unnecessary, like especially all the stuff that's given out, because the thing that really irks me is when people use voiceover to kind of explain things, and then they're just shown to you later, so it was completely unnecessary to use the voiceover. And in this movie that happens. There's things that characters explain to each other once they finally meet each other, um, that they explain to the audience anyways. So I just didn't understand the point of some of that stuff. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, there's one specific scene in the middle of the film where they speak out something that is so blatantly obvious that I just felt like, what is the need for this? There was not a need for them to explain it to me. I get it,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the flashbacks that are shown in the movie. It's not like it's hard stuff to grasp onto.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. But I mean, overall, I think I liked most of the parts of this movie. I mean, it was one of those movies that was I think it's about 2 hours, but it's one of those movies that I mean, you where you almost you're just enjoying it so much that you don't feel the runtime, even though you realize the runtime is going on, but it's not really taking its toll on you just because you're so invested in the story and you're really starting to care for these characters and what's going to happen to them. And I think that's a true testament to how good this movie is. I really like that aspect of the movie. But like you said, it's not a masterpiece. Of course, it has its flaws, it has its problems. There's definitely some logic holes in my opinion, especially towards the end. But I mean, with sci-fi movies, you kind of have suspension of disbelief. So were there any things in particular that you didn't like about the movie, Kurt, besides what I mentioned?
See, I didn't really hate anything in the movie. I thought some of the stuff was a little annoying. Some of the formatting was annoying. Some of the scenes just seemed so unnecessary at times. Like when Tom Cruise and the Riceboro, they're
Yeah.
swimming in the pool for like 10 minutes. I didn't really need that scene. Like, I get it. They're
Yeah.
together. It's obvious. And they come so close to showing nudity in that scene that I thought it was kind of awkward for the rating of the film. But other than that, this movie, the ending pulled me in so much that I even forgot a lot of the stuff that happened at the beginning. Because the ending is shot so well. Between the flashback to real time to
Mm-hmm.
flashback to real time, it's done so good.
Yeah.
And it's so intense.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that. Okay, so back to one more actor that I actually forgot to mention. Morgan Freeman is in this movie as the exposition master. What did you think about Morgan Freeman in this movie?
I actually thought he's really good. Very few times have I actually said that recently for Morgan Freeman, because I feel like he kind of just picks up a paycheck in a lot of movies just because he's Morgan Freeman. He has a good voice, but his character is actually really important.
Mhm.
And when you actually figure out the connection between Cruise and Morgan Freeman in the movie, it's really cool. And it makes the ending just so much cooler than it
Yeah,
could potentially be.
yeah. So when you talk about like the ending, you're talking about the actual ending of like the story with Tom Cruise's character and everything. Or are you kind of talking about the things that happen after that?
Basically anything that happens after. God, I feel like I'm gonna go into a spoiler.
I
I don't
know.
want to.
Okay,
I
well,
don't
we'll
want to
save
do
it.
it.
We'll save it. We'll talk a little bit about this. We'll do a little spoiler section here in a couple minutes. But go ahead and finish what you're saying there, Kurt.
But yeah, I thought Freemo was really good in the movie
Okay.
because I've watched him in recent movies like Olympus Has Fallen. I'm like, he does a good job, but he just kind of sits in a chair and talks. But in this one, he actually has actions and he
Yeah.
moves on screen, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Unlike, well, I don't know. He wasn't in any of the action scenes in Red, was he? I can't remember. I haven't seen that in
I'm
about
not
a
sure.
year or
It's been a
so.
while since I've watched that one.
Yeah, Red's a fun movie though. What did you think about the design of this film? I know we kind of talked about the design of the world a little bit, but what did you think in particular about things such as the bubble ship, which is kind of Tom Cruise's main mode of transportation in the movie, and what did you think about the drones and in specific, I want to know what you thought of the Tet, which is the kind of space station pyramid that's floating in our orbit.
I'll save the Tet for last because
All right.
that was really worth talking about.
Yeah.
The bubble ship. At first, I thought it looked kind of goofy, but then when you see it, kind of the mechanics in which it works, it's actually really awesome. Especially the way it can just change directions at any time.
Hmm.
Um, I thought the sets were amazing.
Yeah.
The air set, the up in the air like glass window set is just amazing to look at. That blew me away.
Hmm.
The Tet, wow, that is the best visual um, object of intrigue that I've seen in a movie in a long time. Because you have to stare at that thing for a solid 10 minutes until you realize what it is at the end of the film. And it's, oh my god, I really like the Tet.
Yeah. It's a really kind of ingenious design in a way because it's something we've all seen that kind of pyramid shape, but it's something that's never been used in sci-fi. I mean, I know Stargate kind of dabbled in that Egyptian pyramid type of thing, but not to where it's like such a main element of the movie. And again, I think that has to go back to Kaczynski's direction, his choices in the designs of things here. Actually, kind of help to tell the story in a way, you know. Because almost in a way, the shape of this thing kind of, just in a visual sense, the Tet, is what I'm talking about here. The design of it and the shape of it actually kind of informs what kind of role it plays, in my opinion, into the story. Because it's kind of this pointy, like ready, this object that's ready to strike in a way. I don't know. I just kind of got that sense from it, man. But I have to agree. I really enjoyed the bubble ship. That was actually one of the displays they had at WonderCon this year, and they had the full ship. And I have to admit, when I first saw it, I'm like, well, this is kind of cheesy. I mean, it's impressive to look at in person, but it's still kind of cheesy. And I thought they did a really good job, like you said, with the way that it moves and then it changed direction, and the kind of ball design in general was really kind of ingenious. The way that it kind of works on screen, the visual elements, the design elements, were pretty top notch. I mean, and just one more thing before I go ahead and let you speak about this. The how you're saying the sets and the practicality of it all. I mean, this movie felt really tactile in a way. Like this felt like a world that could maybe possibly exist, just because everything felt so real. Like when he's out in the wasteland, like I know that from kind of reading some stuff on the making of the film that they actually went to a lot of real life locations. They shot in Iceland, like way out in the middle of nowhere, and bringing these real locations kind of helps, when you have so much CGI that's in the movie, having real things there and real locations, and actually having the actors be able to experience what the location is like, only adds, and that's kind of something that's kind of been lost recently, in my opinion, with a lot of sci-fi movies. Of course, Prometheus did this real well, but my problems with Prometheus weren't with the visual storytelling of that movie. But that's another another one there. All right. So were there still some things you wanted to talk about in spoilers, or did you just want to go ahead and skip that?
I did. There was a couple of things that I thought were noteworthy.
Okay. So for those of you watching at home, those of you people that haven't seen it, this is your warning. We are going to talk about spoilers. We're going to ruin the experience of the movie for you if you listen any further. So make sure to please like, subscribe, comment on the page. Remember, you can always contact us at movienerdsmailbox@gmail.com. So with that being said, we are officially in spoiler territory. So go ahead and take it away, Kurt. What did you want to talk about?
I really liked the very ending of this film. When you figure out what Sally is, it's not something you would expect to see, and it almost reminded me of a bigger version of the Monolith in 2001.
Yeah.
But it could talk, which made it really bizarre. And just the fact that they actually gave Melissa Leo's voice to it made it that much more intriguing. Because she shows up in the movie and you're like, why is this lady talking? Like, because you really don't feel like Melissa Leo when you're watching her on the computer screen that she's real. Like, I never felt that at all. I'm like, there's something behind this. And then when you finally see what Sally is, it's really intriguing. But like, even after that part, the very ending touched me so much, with this starting a family and trying to rebuild the earth one person at a time is just such a cool idea to me. And the fact that it kind of puts a time travel kind of thing into it at the end really was cool.
What do you mean with the number 52 showing up or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Did you really notice? Did you really take that as time travel? Because I didn't really get the sense that it was really time travel.
It's not really time travel, but it's just the idea that she knows that that's not the number 49, Tom Cruise, but it doesn't matter to her because it's still the same person. And I think that was a really cool aspect of the movie.
Yeah. I totally get what you're talking about. I know. I think it was kind of ballsy too for the movie to end on such a character centric moment, with them kind of almost reconnecting in the way that she did with number 49. But I love that specifically the voiceover at the end, like where he's talking about being the same person. And I love the philosophical ideas that brings up, these huge questions about, although we're clones, are we really our own person? What makes us individuals? It's questions like these that really get me thinking, that I love in sci-fi. And that's when I go back to saying like that I just thought it was so well crafted and so well done. Even though I've seen these things before, like in Moon, kind of like we mentioned earlier, there's a cloning plot, and we've seen that a few other times as well, and things like Blade Runner. But overall, I have to agree with you, man. That was a pretty pretty poignant moment to end the movie on, you know?
Yeah. And I do really love the scene when Morgan Freeman just tells Tom Cruise, "Hey, go outside the radiation zone if you want the truth." And you're like, God, what does that mean? And then he goes outside the radiation zone and he stares at himself. And he has that great reaction to it. He's so confused, but he's so defensive at the same time. And he feels conflicted about getting in a fight with himself. And I thought that was very realistic with how you would feel if you had to look at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really like that.
Yeah, that was an interesting scene. But as far as going back to like your interpretation of the ending real quick, I just wanted to touch on one more thing that I kind of just thought about. I took it more as well, first of all, did you even realize she was pregnant and was going to have a child? Because I didn't even realize that until I saw the kid, and I'm like, was she like pregnant when she was in homeostasis, or when she was, hibernation or whatever? And then I guess that's the case. I mean, because I can't really think of any other explanation. Go ahead.
Yeah, because there's no sex scene in the movie between those two characters. So she had to be pregnant for that 6-year period where she was frozen.
Yeah. Which, that baby should be messed up anyways, like that's just not that's just like inhumane, man.
I was expecting the alien baby to pop out, just that creepy tiny worm-like creature.
Just get a chest burster real quick.
Oh yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on in this movie. One thing I thought was interesting, when he says, like, when he kind of shows up there at the end, did you take it as like this was the same clone that he ran into, right? When he went out of like into the radiation zone, correct?
Yeah.
So this was the same one.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I don't know, man. I kind of found that just a little bit confusing. Like, was he searching for this whole time and he had finally found me, or what? Like, what was going on with this, And in that respect, that kind of confused me a little bit, but the overall feeling of it was just so great that I kind of didn't really care, to be honest. So,
Yeah, I feel like this movie kind of had that odd storytelling structure of like a looper, where it's like, don't worry about the science of what's going on, worry more about the characters and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I suspended my kind of how thoughtless I felt like the ending could have been in that sense, because it really doesn't make sense that 52 meets her at the end, because why would he even question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and then going back, another problem I had that I was kind of talking about earlier, as far as like plot holes or logic holes or whatever, goes back to like the whole, oh gosh, what's the main baddie's name here? Sally, the character of Sally. How did this like artificial intelligence entity get all of those things going, like the energy sucking things going on Earth? Did she just confuse these humans into doing it, or like, I mean, it seemed a little vague to me, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Like, it seemed kind of like, okay, we're just gonna pretend like this is just what happens and we're not gonna give any explanation for it.
Yeah, I kind of didn't like that. They don't really explain why Sally exists or how it even came to exist. It just kind of does, and I think that's a pretty problematic aspect of the movie.
Yeah, and it's not even necessarily the Sally itself exists. Like, I'm a perfectly okay with that thing just being there, and that's the way it is. Maybe the MacGuffin of the movie. But just like how she got all of these things accomplished and got the Earth to the way it was, and with these, the huge hydro suckers, I don't even know what they're called, and I just, that aspect of it is one of those ones that kind of, I was like, oh man, like, it's such an important part of the story, and I just wish it would have just got a little bit, you know, a couple little tidbits in there would have been okay for me. So I don't know, but were there any other things you wanted to bring up about Oblivion?
I forgot to go into the design of the drones.
Oh yeah,
Earlier.
Go ahead. Oh.
I really like the drones. I thought they were terrifying. They reminded me of something that you would encounter in a video game and instantly want to run away from. Just their structure, and the fact that you can only hit this really small portion of them to actually take them out makes them even more creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they were. I mean, I think this goes back to the film having a good sound mix, because, like you said, when they show up on screen, you can feel it in your bones. You know, I mean, I don't know if you saw Tron Legacy in the theater, but Tron Legacy was one of the loudest movies I've ever watched, and even on Blu-ray and home video, it's a freaking loud movie. And I wasn't sure if it was just that world Joseph Kosinski was in, or if he just preferred loud sound mixes. But I got my answer tonight because he just likes loud sound mix. I mean, it's a good sound mix because there's a lot of depth to things. You know, you can tell there's a distance from where the sound is coming on from things on screen, but it's also very bombastic in a way. But one more quick question. What did you think about the soundtrack?
I really like the soundtrack. It kind of had a futuristic kind of sound to it, which really complemented the film. I did feel like it kind of was over the top for some scenes. Like the beginning, it plays forever, and it just doesn't stop. I thought that was kind of frustrating. But
Yeah.
the music is just so good in it that I kind of forgave that.
Yeah.
I like soundtracks that don't go with just classical scores. I want to hear something new. So anything that, like, if a Nathan Johnson can do something cool like this, or any sound, any new soundtrack, even like The Social Network had it kind of changed the game for soundtracks. And I feel like the trickle effect is kind of going down when you watch movies like this, because it shows a different type of music to put in a movie.
Yeah, I completely agree. It actually really reminds me of the Tron Legacy soundtrack as well, which kind of they took Daft Punk and hired them to do their own thing. Which one of the things I loved about that soundtrack is it kind of melded their electronic style with that kind of classical feel that you're kind of saying that you don't like all the time. I really enjoy that classical kind of score for a movie, but just adding that electronic and techno element really made it quite interesting in my opinion. And again, that goes back to Social Network and Trent Reznor on that one. But the soundtrack for this one was composed by a French electronic band called M83. So big shout out to those guys. I thought they did a really great job on the soundtrack. It almost reminded me kind of Inception as well. There's those really big brass moments, you know, where things were happening and the story was progressing and the music was kind of going in there and really helping tell the story. It was a really great sound mix on this one. So unless there's anything else you have to say, Kurt, I think we can go ahead and leave it at that.
I'm good.
All right, cool, man. Well, hopefully, I'm going to see this movie again, and we'll go ahead and maybe even be able to talk about it a little more. What would be your final score in this movie, Kurt?
It's strange because I threw a lot of somewhat faux negatives in the film, but I was watching this in the theater with Sarah, and I'm like, you know what? I got to say it. This is my first 10 of the year. Like, I felt like this was my first film that actually gripped me enough to give me a 10.
Cool. Good. That's surprising because I thought I was actually going to be giving it a higher score than you. I am going to go ahead and give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I really liked it, like I said, and there's just those few small things that I had problems with. Overall, I think it's pretty solid movie. Not perfect by any means, but pretty darn solid. So with that being said, we're going to just go ahead and sign off here. So if you guys like what we had to say, make sure to like, enjoy, and subscribe. and to go ahead and pass it along to everyone, because we need all the exposure we can get right now. And all of you fine people listening are awesome. So thank you, all of you guys who have watched the video so far. We really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. My name is Taylor Salem.
And I'm Kurt Hall.
Alrighty, and we'll see you next time, Kurt.
Sounds good.